Welcome in to Swarm Talk, everyone, and happy Wednesday afternoon to you. It is 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, and we are rocking and rolling as we get ready to preview Georgia Tech against North Carolina State tomorrow night on the Flats inside Bobby Dodd Stadium. My name is Bryce Koon, your host here on the Georgia Tech Talk Show of the Crowded Booth at Swarm Talk. We welcome you in, as you can see, but if you're listening, we appreciate you as well. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button as well, as we get it ready to lock and load and talk about an important game for Georgia Tech, an important game for this season, an important game for the future of the program as well. Before we get started, make sure you check out Section 103. They do a fantastic job, and I just want to give them a shout out that we absolutely love what they do. We love their gear. They're the presenting sponsor of this show in terms of the Georgia Tech content, and you can use code Crowded Booth. That is code Crowded Booth for 10% off your first order today. Look, they have some fantastic Christmas attire, a great holiday sweater that you want to get if you want to get a gift for somebody. So I encourage you, check out the brand. They do a fantastic job, and we would love for you to support them and also support us as well. All right, so let's dive into this game. What does this game mean? What is this? Who is NC State? And roller coaster. Shout out Ralph for picking out the Wolfpack as his ACC champ, before. And we had a great comment pop into the chat at 2:52 in the morning. GT Boy says, no excuses on Thursday night. You're the more talented team, to me the better team, and a ton left to play for. You're on the national stage. Go show America why Georgia Tech is back. Go Jackets. Well, GT Boy, I really think you kind of summed this up in totality of what this game means. And I'm going to talk about what it means. We're going to talk about who NC State is, talk about a massive key for Tech, and then I'll get to my prediction. But I think when you kind of look and you kind of see what this game is, North Carolina State is a team coming into the season. I have always felt that Dave Doran has done a great job coaching a team that you have to do a lot with a little in terms of funding, in terms of just not being one of the powers, not just in the ACC, but in your own state. You're often looked as the ugly redheaded stepchild. You're often looked as the little brother kind of aspect to what you have going on in North Carolina. There's Duke. There's obviously North Carolina as well. And so for the folks in Raleigh, they often feel overlooked. And, I always thought Dave Doran has been a great coach. We've talked about this on our college football show that I think the ACC is littered with some really, really solid coaches that have had to do a lot that don't have the funding and the exposure that other conferences have. But this game for Georgia Tech is you're taking on a team in NC State that's had a roller coaster of a season, has gone below where they feel like they would have gone. They were kind of a hot pick with getting Grayson McCall out of the portal. I was high on what Grayson McCall could do, one of the more established and successful quarterbacks that we had seen at the Group of Five level. Obviously, injury has put him out and forced him to medically retire, but he's also wasn't effective when he was playing at times as well. They have a great receiver in Casey Concepcion, and obviously you saw, if you were paying attention to recruiting, his younger brother decommits. So it's a program in NC State that walks into Georgia Tech like they need a win. You know what I mean? Like they really need a win. And I think, I was looking at a couple of stats here just about this team. Overall, this is a team is 5-5. They're battling for, bowl eligibility, which would be, below their standards. But I think in terms of the scope of this game is, and you see it in the title, can Georgia Tech just handle business? And handling business means looking consistent for a full 60 minutes. Now, look, Georgia Tech has obviously suffered kind of this roller coaster as well. You lose your starting quarterback, your backup quarterback that you had gone into the season with, struggled. You then go to your third string true freshman quarterback, and he shows some promise as you're getting your best player on the field back healthy. So there's a lot of those aspects to this as well. But I think that as we kind of sit here and look at this matchup and what it means is it's an opportunity to show consistency. And I think that's like we could sit here and talk for an hour about what are mile markers to show that Georgia Tech has grown. And yeah, there's individual things and we can all come up with different ideas, but I think consistency shows the most growth for me because consistency is what has plagued this team in the past. It's what's kept a lot of teams, not just Georgia Tech, from being able to jump into the solid to good to great categories. And if you can figure that out when you're in the middling tier of college football, that allows you to make that jump. And part of that is when you face a team that Vegas thinks you're better than, that on paper a lot of people think you're better than, when you can go take care of business without a lot of drama, that to me is something this team hasn't done a lot of this year. There's been drama, which is fine. Like you have to win close games. But when you face an ACC opponent that you should beat on paper and you take care of business, to me, that's more of a mile marker of, okay, this team is on the right track. That's another feather in the hat of, building to become a sustainable product on the field that you can in turn show NIL donors, in turn show recruits as well. So what's at stake here? I think your identity is a program a little bit because everyone was so excited. We talked about the win against Miami. But I think that when you look at it is how do you avoid those games just becoming blips and more of the norm as you're actually should be considered as a viable opponent week in and week out. And that's where I think Georgia Tech's teetering because they haven't been able to do things consistently against teams they should take care of business against. And so here's an opportunity, for that. It's a chance to show that, yeah, we had an emotional win, and thank God the 3 bye weeks over. I pray to God we never have to have 2 bye weeks in a span of 3 weeks. But it could show you that if you can come off the mountaintop of Miami and still take care of business and not look ahead to what looks like a interesting, rivalry game and a lot at stake in terms of what Georgia needs to do in clean old fashioned hate next Friday night, then I truly think that that's a mile marker, regardless of what happens in Athens. Being able to come off of the mountaintop of Miami and take care of business. I don't remember where the line has moved to at this point here on Wednesday, and do it, handily. Like you don't have to go out there and blow NC State out. Of course, everyone would love that, and that would even show more growth. But I think just understanding that you take care of business where it needs to be taken care of. And to me, that's the biggest talking point that we have here on this show about show me and then I'll believe. I'm not a big person to talk in conversation. I think Tech fans, there's a lot of that are, and I think a lot of are on the other side have not been because of being burnt by previous regimes. But overall, when you look at how this team fares in terms of handling business, that's the biggest thing. Handle business and be consistent. Those are the two things that I think what this game provides the opportunity to do. So let's dive into who is North Carolina State. Well, who are the Wolfpack? Look, this is a team that was supposed to feature Grayson McCall at the quarterback. C.J. Bailey, a 6'6" freshman quarterback for them. He's got 12 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's from Miami, Florida area. This is a guy that has shown promise. I think could be a solid quarterback in the ACC in the future. He's a freshman and he's 6'6". He is a guy that is, I think, dynamic in what he can do, but he's growing and learning in that role. On the running game side of things, we talked about this in the preseason when we looked at our ACC tiers, and a lot of us had NC State number 2. You felt like with Grayson McCall, they had an experienced quarterback option, but they also snagged Jordan Waters out of the portal from Duke after Manny Diaz left Durham. And so you bring in a guy in Jordan Waters who's had a successful career. He has a 4.9 average, in terms of his yards per carry. The 2 backups for NC State average over 5 yards a carry. So I think when you look at the run game, you can get stuck on the fact that, okay, they only average 3.9 yards per carry. A lot of that has been due to some empty rushes from C.J. Bailey, the freshman quarterback. but this run game can be viable. It is a viable run game when they turn around and they hand the football off. And I think that's a major key in this game for Georgia Tech to be able to go win. Can your interior and your front seven stop their run game? They did a good job of that against Miami and Damian Martinez and Cam Ward. Can you do it again against, led by Jordan Waters and their two backups? Can that be another storyline that you kind of thwart to the side? So, like NC State to me is interesting because I think this team is a lot like Georgia Tech in a certain sense of injuries at the quarterback position and then just general inconsistency and at large have led to kind of these pods of losses. And you could look at some of the losses and those can be scrutinized. You can look at some of their wins and be scrutinized. I don't think these teams are far off in terms of each other in terms of talent. I think I'm not saying it's an evenly matched game, a pick 'em game, but I think that there is a general consensus that, hey, this is a 5-5 team they're still pretty good. And they just have had this rash of injuries. The quarterback position, obviously McCall didn't perform, then he gets hurt. You have to thrust a freshman in there. It's kind of been a wave of things for NC State. Their road win at Cal and then the home blowout of Stanford, not bad losses. And remember, Stanford just beat Louisville. There's a lot of, aspects to that look good. But they've also lost to Wake Forest. So it's, a catch-22 there in the sense of for everything that NC State feels like they've done good, they've also maybe had some steps they've taken backwards there as well. A couple more things on NC State that I wanted to hit on is you could also say that it's a look ahead game for both. Both teams have a rivalry game, coming out of this. It's a team in the Wolfpack that has not been as sharp as they'd like to be. I think that's something that just show up on Thursday night. I don't know. I do believe in the adage that at this point of the season, you kind of are who you are. And I just think this NC State team is a middling, inconsistent ACC team, which you could say that about the entire conference in terms of, teams 3 through 12. I mean, that's kind of what they are. It's endured a lot of injuries. They seem to be playing better. And then they lost 2 weeks ago against Duke, which I think is a solid ACC team. So where are they on the emotional scale coming into what should be a good environment on Thursday night? That's something I'll be watching because, like I said, I don't think there's a massive gap in terms of the on paper talent in this game. It's just been this weird injuries and this weird type of, I don't know. The bottom line says it's just been a weird conundrum altogether. In terms of what NC State season's been, haven't been consistent. They've been hit by injuries, and it is what it is. Now, going back to CJ Bailey, this is a guy who he has flashed his potential against below average defenses. He has carved them up. He has done a good job. He has improved, and I think that when you look at Georgia Tech's defense, it's more of who's going to show up in this game. I tend to lean towards the fact that Tyler Santucci probably has a great game plan coming off 2 weeks against them. I believe they're going to try to pressure, and I could see it, forcing him to make decisions earlier than he wants to is going to be a massive key in this game as well. So it was a 9-point spread when I looked at this last time. Both of these teams like to play one-score games. I think one of the caveats of this is that Georgia Tech is 3-1 in close games in those one-score contests, while NC State is 2-3. So combined, they've played 9 one-score games. So both teams used to being in that. But at home, I mean, I think that helps in this situation. Hopefully, it's a good environment. But when you look at what this team is overall, we'll move to the second part of this. Like I've said, I don't think NC State's bad. I think that they have talent on the roster. It just hasn't worked out. And so they're kind of in this wandering through the desert type of mode in terms of that. Now, would it surprise me if Georgia Tech blew them out? Probably. It would surprise me if NC State blew Georgia Tech out. Yes, it would. I see this kind of continuing to maybe be a close game. Maybe Georgia Tech pulls away late. I'll get to that here just in a second as well. But I think just bottom line, when you when you look at this, what's the biggest key for Georgia Tech? Look, we talked about NC State's run game. We talked about, their young quarterback and him maturing and growing in the season. The biggest key to me, and I go and tell you, I think Georgia Tech wins this game, and they really win this game if they do this right here. Just don't beat yourself. I talked about how I don't think these teams are evenly matched. I do think Georgia Tech has the better team on paper. But, when you look at just what Georgia Tech has going for them, you come off the emotional win against Miami. You've got a massive game that everyone's going to have their eyes on next Friday night in Athens. Really, you have to dive into this Thursday night game, though, and you can't beat yourself. And what I mean by that is negative plays. You can't have lots of negative plays, whether in terms of that's a penalty or it's actual negative gained plays, because I think that you would start to spark an NC State team that's working to get to a bowl game. I'll also say this in terms of don't beating yourself. You have to play gap sound, assignment sound football. And when I say don't beat yourself is, yes, other teams could move you off the ball. That can happen. But I think that when Georgia Tech does get in trouble, either it's one or two things. They're either getting physically dominated at the line of scrimmage, or they're playing outside of themselves. And it's one thing to look at a game and you could say, and I think a large part was this in the Notre Dame game, where there's an obvious gap in talent, size, and things like that, where you were getting blown off the ball in terms of the line of scrimmage in the front seven, but you start to play outside yourself. So if NC State, which they can run the ball, please don't be misled by the 3.9 yards per carry stat. That takes in a large part of what Bailey has done to the quarterback position. This is a backfield in terms of the running backs that can run the football. If NC State starts to have some success, one of the big things, and they showed this against Miami, they haven't shown it, in elsewhere, and I'm not going to buy into the recency bias of, look, that's cool stuff to do, and that's fun to do as a fan, but we've all seen the comments and the roller coaster of, we're good, we're bad, we're good, we're bad, we're good, we're bad. Which version of that defense is going to show up? It is largely improved from last season, but do you get outside of yourself in terms of playing the run, stopping the run, controlling the edges? That's something to me is more focused on the inward than the outward, because they could dictate to you and start to move you off the ball, but how you react to it is going to be ultimately, in my opinion, the difference between a win or a loss. Because if you start to overcompensate, if you start to overrun your gap, if you start to try to play outside of yourself and play and freelance, that's when they hit you for the big game. And then the locomotive starts going for NC State. And like we talked about on the defensive side of things, now their offense starts to gain some momentum. And now the young quarterback doesn't feel as much pressure and he can relax as well. So a lot of this comes down to just don't beat yourself. If Georgia Tech plays a solid game in this one, I think they win it. I think they can win it by 2 scores. But if you start to see some of the bad habits rear their head, that's when I would get worried and you start to say, okay, you're in for a dogfight now against a team that you are better than on paper. Like I said, I don't think the gap's that wide. I don't think Georgia Tech can just roll the ball out there because I don't think the Jackets are talented enough, or I don't think the Wolfpack are bad enough for that gap to be so wide that you could just roll the ball out there and beat them. But I do believe that if you take care of business, you don't make some crazy type of mistakes, you should win this game comfortably in front of what should be a good crowd and what should be a great student section, a senior night game. All of those things considered, you should enjoy a drama-free win if you take care of yourself and take care of business. Now, it does, get to this point right here. I've mentioned this on the last show, the environment and crowd, and I've seen people already talk about this. And I will say it again, and I know it'll get clipped again on social media. Weather looks like it's going to be awfully chilly on Thursday night. And I've already seen some people say on different groups and stuff like that, like, well, it's probably only going to be 20K there. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about environment. Look, we're very critical of the ACC's leadership and decision-making in terms of what they want to do to promote the conference. I think they've fallen far short of that. One thing I think that has become synonymous with ACC football is that Thursday night slot. And, people might laugh at it and say, well, yeah, you get the Thursday night game, you get the weekday game, but the SEC gets, the marquee time slot, each one of those on Saturday. That's not going to change. That's how it's going to be. But there's been something unique about the Thursday night time slot for the ACC. ESPN ran a great promotional on this just in terms of, the Virginia Tech game a couple of weeks ago and what that has meant in the history of Virginia Tech. I think that when you look at Thursday nights, I think it's an opportunity to be in the national spotlight, and you should take that whenever and wherever you can get it. You're going to be on, the primetime TV channel. You're going to be in that primetime slot, and you get a chance, like one of the earlier commenters said, to showcase yourself on the national stage. And part of that is, yeah, it's going to be cold, but you got a senior class that you're honoring. Some of them are transfers. Some of them are, you know, guys that have been through the program, through the coaching change and stuff like that. These guys deserve to be honored. And these guys deserve to stand there with a nearly packed out Bobby Dodd. And if the complaint is the weather, like I don't know. I no longer know where to go with this on this fan base. You can continue over and over again to make excuses of why you don't want to go to games, or you can be like 100 other programs and just show up. Because I think complaining about it, about what's going on, but not offering a solution in terms of attendance is, and you're not part of the solution. I lose the respect factor of that. Now, there's extenuating circumstances in every instant, but this is an environment that you should be up for. This is an environment that you should be there for. It's senior night, it's Thursday night, it's a chance to get to 7 regular season wins, which you have not done in a long time. It's an opportunity to go on a winning streak ahead of your big rivalry game, and a chance to honor a senior class that is, one, the transfers have come in and greatly helped you, and then two, the guys who stuck it out when it was bleak, when things weren't going well. So I I don't know where to go with this fan base anymore, because I'll be keeping an eye on the attendance. I fully expect the students to show up. The student section has been phenomenal. It's been great. But you got to stop making excuses of why you don't go, because this is college football. You only get 6 to 7 of these an entire year. And for Tech's purposes, you only get 5 or 4 of these entire year in terms of home games where you can show out. Show up, be loud, and this pride in a institution that you love to talk about will walk the walk. Let's stop just talking about it. Walk the walk. Show up, support these kids who have given their blood, sweat, and tears to a program to turn it around and bring it to some positivity. Support the head coach that a lot of you so desperately want to be the guy that leads Georgia Tech, not just back to stability, but to the promised land. Show up and support it. If you're worried about the cold, I mean, maybe this just isn't the sport for you to be a diehard fan of. That's not how this works. You can't pick and choose what you want as a fan. You either are in or you're a casual fan. There's no in between. And like I said, if you live 7 hours away, that's fine with me. But it's more of just the constant complaining and the manufacturing of excuses every single time any type of blip shows up in terms of showing up to a game. I'm kind of done with it, because I feel like there's a section of this fan base, and I don't know, I don't want to know what I want to put the number at. You take out students, maybe it's 15 to 20,000 people that are diehards, that want to be there, that travel to every single game. I mean, look, you everyone knows who I'm talking about, but obviously the Veach family is one of them. I mean, Patience, Jim, Jennifer, all of those people, they do a fantastic job of showcasing their fandom by going to every single game. Now, I'm not saying you have to go do that. You do that with it if it's within your means, but show up, be proud about what this program has become, and back these kids. And also for a recruiting opportunity. I mean, this is your last recruiting in-game home visit opportunity for these guys. I think it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how it rolls and what goes from here, because show up, be loud. It's the last missing component of this team. This team has done enough, in my opinion, to warrant you spending the money on a ticket and the price of admission. I don't know. To me, it is, I just, I just need to see it. I think that's the end of the discussion too. We can't keep having discussion about atmosphere because this is going to be a fun one. It's a night game. Guys, it's a Thursday night in Midtown Atlanta. Like this is the type of environment that when you get kids on OVs during the summer that they want to be there for because it's prime time and it's fun. It's under the lights at Bobby Dodd. And I've been blessed to be able to travel to a lot of different venues this year in college football. I'm not trying to compare. I think it's apples and oranges to compare out of conference and stuff like that. But there's something special about being in a stadium at night. And you don't get too many of those opportunities. And if you're Georgia Tech, you haven't got a ton of them because due to scheduling, due to all different types of things, your TV contract, which is completely out of Tech's hands. Like, this is what it's about. This is what we all fell in love with college football about. When you get to look around and you've got 45, 50,000, people all bought into what's going on in the field. And I'm telling you, it makes a difference. And I'm telling you, the players feel it. The recruits understand it. It is a real viable thing. It's not some make-believe thing in Candyland. This is a real viable thing that you can utilize in terms of recruiting, pitch, and just overall motivating your team. And so they deserve it. They deserve it. I don't know what more you want to see from this team in terms of I'll go when this happens. I'll go when that happens. Well, then don't come. I mean, just don't show up. And I think there's no point in continuing to talk about it. It is what it is. Either you are bought in, you're going to go, or you're going to wait till Georgia Tech wins a national title to show up, which, I mean, okay, that's probably one of the hardest things to do in all of sports. So they've earned they've earned the right to have attendance. They've earned the right for you to show up, be loud a Thursday night. If I could be there, I hands down 110% would. To me, it's going to be interesting because it's a special place. And I've told some people who are going to go to the game, a Saturday night at Bobby Dodd's a pretty cool place to be. Pretty cool place to be indeed. I do think Georgia Tech wins this game. I've got them winning this one, by covering the spread. I just think they can do it. I think they're going to show the consistency. I think they're going to show the ability to just be consistent. And if you do that, my man, let's take the gloves off and let's get ready for Black Friday. That's really all I got to say about that. So it's going to be awesome. It's actually awesome. Joe does say, I wouldn't say we have the best skyline. Have you seen BYU's? BYU's is beautiful. BYU's a bucket list item based off of the atmosphere around that stadium as well. Swarm Talk, presented by Section 103. We always want you a part of it. We always want you to be there. We always want you to show up and be loud. And you need to do it in that Section 103 gear. Make sure you use code Crowded Booth for 10% off your order today. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend, and who knows? We might be in Athens when you get ready for it. Zach does say, I'm going to be in Section 102, Row 3. I'm attacking the first North Carolina State player I see. Zach, appreciate the donation there. Hope you're doing well as well. Will it be King and Philo again? I would imagine so. We'll see, obviously, what the health status of that is. It'll be very, very interesting to see as well. We'll catch you next time here on Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with